Oh man, when you get into retail, I highly encourage folks to have what's called a specification book. Generate exactly what you want your meat cutters to be cutting. Take pictures, write descriptions, and build some type of consistent library.
Hello, me folks. Welcome back to the MeatsPad podcast. It feels weird, but it's been a while since last conversation that Dr. Bass and I had on our own without no guest. But I think it's a good opportunity this year or right now to talk about many things that I think at some point when we have a conversation on a topic, we just focus on that topic and we don't get to talk about just general things happening in the meat science community. Dr. Bass, how are you?
I'm great, man. Yeah, lot going on right now. There's always the opportunity abounds with topics and opportunities throughout the industry, meat processing, meat science, all the different fabrication advancements that's coming out, and a lot of great opportunities to network as well with folks in the industry. And so yeah, it's good to get just the two of us, two dudes talking again, and see where this conversation takes us.
Yeah, no, and I was thinking like it's gonna be this year, it's gonna be our third year publishing content. It's just 3 years. It seems yeah, 3 years, that's nothing. But again, I think we're trying our best to keep communicating, keep bringing content that is of value for the meat processing, meat science community. And Dr. Bass, we have the Reciprocal Meat Conference coming up in June.
That's right. Yeah, June 25th through the 28th. Mark your calendars. For those who are American Meat Science Association members, but then also those who may not be, this is a great opportunity to go check it out and see if this is an organization that might be a good fit for you. Again, that's June 25th through the 28th, 2023 in St. Paul, Minnesota. So yeah, it should be a big one, should be a good one.
We also have the 84th convention coming up in July for the American Association of Meat Processors. That's from July 13th through the 15th. That's going to take place in Charleston, South Carolina this year. We'll be there hopefully doing again some good episodes with some meat processor folks. Last year, I got the opportunity to not only speak with meat processors, but also some meat processing faculty that was in AMP, was in Des Moines last year. But we've been getting a lot of, I guess, technical questions, and I think this is a topic that Dr. Bass, you as with your unique background, being in the industry for that many years, and then coming back to faculty, you understand this better than a lot of people. And I think it's we can take a time to talk about how to make a successful meat brand. Mm-hmm. And again, we can talk hours and hours about this, but I think we can focus on maybe 2-3 main questions about this that mm-hmm. I've been getting questions, and also miscommunication again, and again, that's some of the opportunities that we have as meat science experts to communicate efficiently how they can go about doing this. And I just said we have to be consistent, providing a high quality product, not only the quality, but also a product that is safe. So mm-hmm. I think from there we can start. We getting the last month some phone calls about this. How can I, again, as a beef producer, and we have many people that I'm not very familiar with meat science or meat processing at all, and they're
Mhm.
starting to get involved in this. And it's a lot of things, and sometimes you don't. I mean, you cannot extrapolate the information. And again, one topic is the big one is how do I make sure that my customer gets a consistent product.
Mhm.
And again, we spoke about this. And if you have a facility that's federally inspected, and you can get some USDA inspection, but also the grading system in your plan. That it really depends on your market and where you're at to see. I mean, I've seen a lot of state inspection facilities that are very successful and not necessarily are federal inspected. So
Mhm.
I don't know. Maybe we can touch on some of the main things about this and how to effectively segregate carcasses. And again, we can talk about many things, but I think that from here we can start this topic to dive into this.
So yeah, so you mentioned branding, and you know, I have had the opportunity to work with probably one of the most successful, if not the most successful meat brands out there, the Certified Angus Beef brand. Spent 8.5 years out there with them in Ohio. Learned an awful lot. I don't think you can ever learn too much in that category. And there are definitely some folks there who are far more experts than I, but I'll give you my perspective. And it's been great for me, this perspective, because it's allowed me to go around the country and the world really and share some ideas on branding and how to really build a really good meat program, a meat business. And it all depends kind of on your unique locale, your clientele, your abilities, and you mentioned beef, but any of these concepts or ideas for building successful brands is can be applied to just about any meat and really just about any product for that matter. It's just being consistent and and providing a good value that meet the expectations of your customers. That's kind of the basic foundation to building those brands, or at least that's been my understanding. And so, for an example, in the meats world, you know, if you're working with fresh meat, um, livestock can be highly variable. Pork and chicken, not as much as beef, but there are ways of still standardizing and improving meat quality even within, say, pork and chicken. Um, Beef, we do have some great standards that are out there, and to begin with, you know, you have to have very good, consistent handling of livestock. If you are a slaughter facility, make sure that you're handling those animals consistently, humanely, obviously, but also in a manner that will produce a very high quality carcass every single time with predictability for your own employees. As you go through the process, maintain very high quality standards on the kill floor and consistency in cooling and chilling, because you want to minimize any of that variability that you might encounter later on when that meat finally goes into a package. And then when it comes down to the fabrication of that meat, be consistent. You don't have to be everything to everybody. At least not at the beginning. If you're trying to be everything to everyone, um, uh, you need to first have a very well established business and brand, and then branch out. But you know, find what you're really good at and stick with that. I've seen far too many folks with a lot of really great ideas and a ton of ambition try to be everything to everybody. And what happens is you end up stretching yourself and your resources so thin that it's very hard to have that consistency for your clientele. People come in to your operation or work with your operation with expectations, and it's so important to make sure that you are meeting those expectations. If you're going to focus on beef, get really good at beef, and don't be worried about the pork sausage and the marinated chicken that you could sell, but that's just kind of a side gig. um, Whereas, maybe you are a further processor, and regardless of size, get really good at what you do and then continue to branch out. And so that's been the biggest thing that I've seen folks that are trying to establish a brand fail in is that they're just trying to do too much all at once. Get really good at something first. And then have something that is of good value. And you mentioned high quality, and I don't want to denigrate anyone, but we could all be trying to achieve the highest level of marbling in pork and beef and the highest top premium um, product in any of those categories. But realistically, if we have something that is consistent and of a good value to the customer, that's what's going to help build your brand. And so we could even be thinking of like a water added ham. As long as it is consistent and a good value, you're not asking $20 a pound for this thing. You're pricing it accordingly, but it's available regularly. People don't have any trouble with availability and ordering product, and it's meeting their expectations of, say, that water added ham. Then you have a brand and you have something that you can continue to go with. Okay, so something that I've mentioned a lot with folks that are looking at branding their business is minimize that variability, but then also say to yourself, if you're focusing on a high quality item, just remember that it needs to maintain high quality, and you can't take shortcuts. If you have interest of maybe putting in a lower value item into that line, you need to almost completely regenerate a new label or a new brand for that. Subtle differences of just maybe putting a grade on something and saying, well, I put the label on there, so they should have known, that doesn't count. When people are looking at a brand, they have expectations. And it goes for anything. I mean, we could be talking about cars or aluminum foil or broccoli right now. I mean, it all accounts. So
Yeah, and I was gonna when you say brand and when you say I mean I've talked to a lot of folks that exactly just said they're trying to convey their product to every customer. I'm talking about maybe the high-end restaurant, but also they want to have a an accessible protein as well.
yeah,
And sometimes if they do that, they have to understand that maybe the brand has to be different. Maybe you have to create a brand for a certain market,
yeah,
but you also are going to be getting some product that is not as high quality. I mean, yeah, it's going to be
yeah,
double work, but that's something that I don't know what you think of this, but
yeah. Well, it comes down to having discipline within your business to draw a line in the sand and say, these items on this side of the line are eligible for my premium brand that I want, to put my face on or to put my logo on. And then if you do have other products, say you are a slaughter facility and you're going to have variability because you don't know what that animal's going to perform like until it's hanging into the cooler, you have to make some decisions at that point and have some consistency, some specifications that will help with that consistency to help you maintain discipline. And if there's something that doesn't fit with that particular logo, that particular brand, then it needs to go into a different bucket, if you will. And that bucket could just be the commodity. If we're talking pork, that just goes out as just plain pork. But if you're sorting pork carcasses by, say, a breed or a marbling level or a color level on the muscle, or even measuring pH, going to that extent, then you will be able to maintain more of that consistency, and then you have criteria that you can follow. I mean, that's the whole point of grading. It is we're giving graders a line in the sand saying, if it meets this level, it is this. If it meets this level, it's this. But that's the commodity market. And to really stand out, it's very important to design specifications that truly are different and will stand out for your brand.
You know what? I like this topic, and I think at some point we need to talk about retail here in a minute,
Yeah.
because that's the last channel where the end consumer is going to get your product.
Mhm.
But I do believe that if I'm a small meat processor and I want to start getting where can I obtain those specifications? I mean, you said color, you said grading.
Mhm.
I mean, maybe I don't want to start with everything, but I want to start slowly to have a more standardized product.
Mhm. Yeah. So, well, I mean, the best thing you could do is probably take a meat science class to really see all the all the different directions you can go with meat products. But that's also what we try to do here at MeatsPad, of course, is to be that information. Reach out obviously to info@meatspad.com if you have any specific questions. But if you're trying to design your own brand, it probably wouldn't hurt to go out there and just start learning a little bit more about whatever your species might be and what your final product is. So let's say you're a small processor and you specialize in hams and bacons. Okay, so what are some of the things that will provide for you a high quality item? Well, pH is one of them, and it's not expensive to buy a little puncture type pH probe. You can get them on Amazon, I'm sure, or just about any retailer out there. And what this does is it gives you a good estimation as to, are we going to be producing a consistent ham? And again, is it going to be a value type? Is it a premium type? And you can draw the line in the sand. We're looking for ideal pHs of 5.4 to 5.6 in most meat and muscle, ultimate pH in the meat. If it's lower than that, you're probably going to have some dryness issues. If it's higher than that, you can actually be able to capture more moisture when you're pumping it and pickling, and you're gonna get a juicier product. But then at the same time, it's important to adjust for that, so you're not over salting, under salting, things like that. Okay, so there's that particular aspect. There's color standards that the pork industry carries. If we wanted to focus more on the marbling, we know marbling is a huge factor in the beef world. And honestly, for the pork listeners out there, please start using the standards that the I think it's the Pork Producer Council carries. There are marbling and color standards for pork. And if we can use those, we can actually start segregating carcasses into higher quality levels that maybe can achieve a premium at the retail case. Use the model that beef has, which is the grading model that we use, marbling scores for segregating into prime, choice, and select. But then also you can look at some of those brands that are available on the USDA Agricultural Marketing Service website. Takes a little bit of digging, and again, you can email info@meatspad.com and we can probably connect you to those links. But you can see those specifications that say beef companies have used, and there's many different types of beef brands that are out there, and the specifications that they use. In most cases, it's an age and a marbling categorization. But then there's also, you can get into the consistency of dimensionality, carcass weights, ribeye sizes, or loin eye sizes if we're talking about pork. You can get into other lack of defects, so you're trying to prevent certain defects, or focus in on a specific breed. I do know there are a few pork programs out there that really are just one breed, and that's okay, but there's still variation within a breed. And so it's important to still have those actual hard and fast carcass specifications if you're talking about fresh meats. In processed, you have a little bit more ability to maintain a more consistent product, because you're bringing in ingredients, and oftentimes you're having a cooking or smoking step that's involved. And so you'll be able to maintain more of that consistency as long as you're purchasing raw product that is of high quality and consistency as well. So that's a lot of information there.
No, it is a lot of information, and I think I guess my intent to that question was, lately we've been speaking with meat processors, not only based in the US, but also internationally. And those, I mean, you mentioned those factors: age, you mentioned genetics, and in my opinion, this is one of the two main factors that we do very well in the US. So we don't, I mean, genetics, especially in beef, I mean, we are very good at providing or producing a high quality product that is consistent because of the genetic programs that we have. We started back in the 1970s, and the meat quality program that started 100 years ago.
Yep.
And
Yep.
there's countries out there that just started 2-3 years ago, but with a new meat quality grading system, which is the case in Mexico, or some countries that have not there yet, that are about just rethinking about how they merchandise and market their beef products.
Well, and if I can interrupt there, because I think it's important for the listeners to understand that we don't have to reinvent something here. And I teach in my courses, and I've given this presentation many times, is that I give examples of a variety of different countries or areas. Okay, so United States, Canada, Mexico, Japan, and Australia have grading systems that actually are quite similar. Now, they're different in certain aspects because in many cases we're dealing with different animals, but they all have some underlying specifications. And it comes back to, what does it take to make a good eating experience? This is all in the beef category, but it's marbling, and they continue to put emphasis on marbling for categorization purposes. US and Canada are very, very similar. Mexico's new system is very, very similar. So North America in general has a pretty similar grading system. Japan focuses, of course, on their very unique Kobe Wagyu type animals. So very high marbling, different location on the carcass, but still focusing on marbling. And then you have probably what I would say is the most advanced grading system that's out there is the Australian system. And really it is very scientific. It's also very confusing for for the Australians that are out there listening. You know, I apologize for kind of saying that, but it's true. It's extremely scientific, but it can also be maybe a little overwhelming for consumers. And so but either way, all of those criteria from those different countries are necessary for selection and for segregating carcasses, because carcasses are variable, and that's just what it is. And so but to my point, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can go out and see what others have done in the past, either from a country standpoint or from current branding standpoints, and create your brand from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that out of all these that we spoke, had a conversation with a retail business. It's a medium retail business that have this unique way of cutting, because they're still getting sites, carcass sites at the store, and they have their own butcher shop, but they are starting to question the quality of the carcasses that they're getting. They didn't used to look at quality to pay. They pay the same. They get 20 sides, they'll pay the same of those 20 sides. But they're starting to get more stores. They need to standardize their system. So one of the things that I started telling them, like, well, your customer is used to getting that quality. I mean, they're actually starting to segregate that because they're getting to a high-end market. But the first thing that I told them is, like, do you know what a spec is? Like, no, you don't know what a spec is. So how can, because they get size, but also they get box beef, but they don't have the knowledge to discern from, I mean, when a product is not meeting the guidelines of the spec, looking at either at the carcass level or at the subprimal level. And I think that's one recommendation that and again, that's one thing, right? That you say, okay, you
Yeah.
do this, but the second thing to do is help them. How can we help them to, again, they have nothing to do with that because they never
Yeah.
done it, and they need some education to see, okay, if I'm gonna get, I'm going to get or starting to obtain better quality, you need to look at some specs of your
Mhm.
product. As I said, a carcass level and the surprise
Yeah, well,
level.
and so yes, so specifications can be carcass level, as you've mentioned, but then yes, it absolutely can be at the retail level. And oh man, when you get into retail, I highly encourage folks to have what's called a specification book. Generate exactly what what you want your meat cutters to be cutting. Take pictures, write descriptions, and build some type of consistent library portfolio, if you will, of the different cuts so that you're going to get new people in or different people that come in, and to maintain that consistency of what the expectations are for the customer beyond the carcass quality specifications. But now we're talking about, what does a ribeye need to look like? And this is what a ribeye now looks like at this store. And if we're expanding into multiple stores, this is what the ribeyes are going to look like at all of the stores. And so, and it's so important to do this. And it's mind-boggling to me, honestly, how many companies don't operate with specification books or some type of written down documentation saying this is what the expectation is from the management of what that final product should look like. Great example is you go into a grocery store and just look at the hot dogs that are in grocery stores. There is consistency. You can have different brands, but within that brand, there are consistencies, and I would guarantee that those companies have specifications for those hot dogs. They all need to look a certain way. They need to be a certain length. Length of a hot dog is a specification, and you can measure that. It's anything you can measure is going to be that specification. You can't manage what you don't measure, and so this is just the beginnings of really good management, is having specifications written down for how the management believes that final product should look like and should be presented. By giving that bit of information and that guidance, now your workers can do what they're asked to do. And I'll be honest, it's not being bossy, it's good management, and workers appreciate that. Employees appreciate direction. And that's what you're doing. You're giving them direction. You gave them a roadmap to follow. Go forth.
Yeah, no, and I think just you mentioned earlier, we're not reinventing
No.
the wheel. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of retail businesses, the big ones, the medium ones, they have something that is called specs, and it's just taking some of that, and a good indication, a good example is that the
Yep.
IMPS, the institutional meat purchasing specification. If I don't think if I got it
Yeah, you
right,
got it.
but
Yep. Which the pictorial version is the Meat Buyer's Guide that's put out by NAMI, North American Meat Institute. Same specifications, it's just now you have pictures to go along with it. It's a great book that anybody working with fresh meat should have on their shelf. I kind of have almost a history lineup of them all the way back into the 80s back here.
so there you go. I think that's the first, one of the first things to do. Grab one of these examples that we talked, the NAMI option or the IMPS, and that's number one, right? Looking at the spec sheet, looking at what your ultimate product is, and if you have that information, because we didn't talk about yield, but one of the main things about this is, am I getting the right length of the ribeye? Am I getting the 7 ribs? Am I getting 6.5? But you don't know that until you don't measure it. And if you don't measure it, you don't know if you're getting less of a good product. And it's not only quality, it's also yield.
Yeah. Well, and so what specifications do is it helps the management have expectations as well. It's not just for the customer. Now the management should have certain parameters or fences now that the product should be falling into. And if finished product is not falling within those parameters, something is not right in the business. Or maybe the raw product, the raw sourcing isn't where it needs to be. And what those specifications do, it just helps managers be better managers, right?
Well, good information. Good information. I hope this topic can at least get folks out there the basics of what they have to look at if they want to either implement a new quality system or improve it. So I think that's this is a good way.
Yep, you got to start measuring things. That's the beginnings. So,
all right, Dr. Bass. Well, we'll see you soon. I appreciate your time again. We'll continue this year, and I think we have a surprise for the 100th episode coming soon.